The battleship Resolute had been declared lost for over 2 standard cycles, swallowed by the uncharted darkness beyond the Halcyon Rift. Families mourned. Admirals cursed the anomaly for stealing their best crew. The enemy, the Varn Dominion, celebrated the loss as if the galaxy itself had confirmed humanity's fragility. Yet deep in the void, Captain Rourke stared through the cracked viewpane, listening to the strange hum that had been guiding them. He had no proof, only instinct, that they had not been lost by accident. The rift was a door, and something had decided to open it. That hum, it was getting louder now. It almost sounded like a heartbeat, deep and patient. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, wondering if the sound was in the ship, the space, or their own minds. It had started as a mission to deliver a peace envoy to the Dominion's frontier station, but peace had been nothing more than a polite word for surrender. The Dominion's demands were impossible. Dismantle all orbital defenses, pay tribute, and hand over Earth's outer colonies. Rourke had refused. Their envoy had been taken, their ship surrounded. Then the rift had appeared, an impossible tear, in space, glittering with unnatural light. The Dominion hailed them, warning of its danger, but Rourke had felt the pull. "Full thrust," he'd ordered, to the horror of his crew. They'd plunged into the fracture, chased by furious Dominion warships. The moment they crossed, the galaxy vanished, replaced by a void where the stars were wrong. That was 2 years ago. Now, something in that wrongness had finally changed. The crew had adapted in strange ways. Navigation was useless. Weapons systems failed without warning, and time seemed elastic. Days sometimes stretched like weeks. Yet, the hum never left them. It seeped into dreams, shaping visions of a massive crown of black metal suspended above a world of pale fire. Lieutenant Vance claimed he'd seen it in his sleep long before the rift. Others began drawing it unconsciously, on bulkhead walls. Rourke tried to suppress talk of prophecy, but deep down he was beginning to believe. This crown wasn't just a symbol, it was a challenge. If they could find it, maybe they could find a way home. But he also knew that finding it would mean crossing paths with whatever force ruled this pocket of reality. 3 days ago, the hum had shifted into a rhythm, like a beacon. Vance insisted it was calling them to a precise set of coordinates. Against his better judgment, Rourke ordered the Resolute to follow the signal. The journey took them through corridors of dark matter clouds, where the ship's lights barely pierced the haze. Shadows drifted outside, moving with deliberation, but sensors reported nothing. They passed a derelict ship, alien, unknown. Its hull melted into twisted sculptures, as if reshaped by heat and will. No life signs, no history in any database. The hum grew stronger still, vibrating in their bones. Some crew began to smile, without reason. Others wept silently, and through it all, Rourke kept his eyes forward. Then, the mist thinned. Before them, suspended above a continent of swirling firestorms, was the crown. Vast enough to eclipse a moon, forged from metal so dark it seemed to drink light. Energy arced between its jagged points like lightning trapped in an endless loop. The hum became a roar, deafening in its intimacy. Rourke realized it wasn't just sound. It was words, ancient and slow, whispering promises of dominion, of revenge, of escape. He gripped the armrest, forcing himself to breathe. The rift had not been a trap. It had been an invitation, and now he understood the price of accepting it. The crew stood in silence as the image filled the bridge. The crown loomed in the void, an impossible construct radiating authority. Even the Dominion's most formidable battle stations were toys compared to it. Commander Hale's voice broke the quiet, low and deliberate. "If it's a weapon, we're dead before we can breathe." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "If it's a weapon, it's been waiting for someone to pick it up." The hum inside their skulls shifted, now pulsing in sync with their heartbeats. Ensign Cade reported that power levels across the ship had stabilized for the first time in years. Lights burned brighter, systems hummed smoother. The Resolute was waking up, but so was something else. Rourke could feel it. The Crown wasn't just watching, it was measuring them. Approaching the structure was like flying into the gaze of a god. Automated defenses did not fire. Instead, the path before them cleared, corridors of plasma storms parting as if guided by invisible hands. The hull temperature spiked, yet internal readings remained within human tolerance, as if the ship had been granted passage. Lieutenant Vance, pale with a fevered glow in his eyes, whispered coordinates without checking any console. They matched, exactly with navigational readouts that appeared seconds later. "It's calling me by name," Vance muttered. Rourke ignored the chill crawling up his spine. There would be no turning back now, not when every instinct screamed that their only way home lay through the heart of this crown. Docking was unlike any maneuver they'd known. Gravitational fields shifted, and the Resolute was drawn toward a vast aperture at the crown's base. Inside, they found an ocean of light, flowing like liquid between colossal archways of metal etched with symbols no one recognized. As they descended, crew members reported phantom voices in their earpieces, speaking in languages that translated into impossible concepts. Phrases like the inheritance of silence and the empire beneath thought. The docking clamps sealed without command. All external sensors went dark. They were inside, and the crown had closed behind them. The hum was no longer distant. It was inside their skulls, warm and insistent, like an intimate hand resting on. The mine.exploration teams formed quickly, each armed with standard rifles and sensor drones. The corridors were immense, designed for being several times the height of a human, their walls lined with machinery that pulsed like veins beneath skin. Every step seemed to echo too long, as though the crown had its own way of keeping time. Vance stayed close to Rourke, his murmured directions proving eerily accurate. They encountered no signs of life, yet objects seemed freshly maintained, floors unscarred, mechanisms clean. Then, in a chamber the size of a city, they found it. A throne carved from the same light-drinking metal, suspended above a pit of glowing storm. Resting on its arm was a smaller crown, human-sized, its surface whispering like wind over stone. The crew froze, knowing this was no relic. It was an offer. When Rourke stepped forward, the crown rose as if drawn by an invisible tether. His helmet's HUD flickered, displaying lines of alien script and then, disturbingly, his own name. Hale's voice cut through the comms, sharp with warning. "Captain, you don't know what it'll do." Rourke's hand trembled, the hum turning into a low chant that throbbed in his bones. Visions burst in his mind, fleets kneeling before him, Dominion dreadnoughts burning, Earth safe and untouchable. But laced through the grandeur was something darker, the weight of command eternal, the knowledge that once worn, the crown would, never release him. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, the floor beneath them began to shift. The chamber's transformation was sudden and violent. Platforms rose from the abyss, forming bridges that stretched into the darkness beyond sight. Machinery deep below groaned like tectonic plates in motion. Rourke barked orders to regroup, but Vance stepped forward, his face twisted with both awe and fear. "It knows you're not ready," he said, voice almost not his own. The smaller crown hovered inches from Rourke's chest, pulsing faintly. All around, the walls lit with streams of alien script that moved like rivers, converging on the throne. The pit storm intensified, sending arcs of light up toward the ceiling. The crown's hum became a pulse of urgency. The choice was slipping from him. Hale pulled Rourke back, her grip firm. "Captain, this could be bait. We don't know what it wants." Her words cut through the intoxicating visions clouding his mind. He looked around at his crew, their expressions a mix of terror and hope. The Dominion was ruthless, but whatever power this artifact held might be worse. Still, the thought of returning home empty-handed after years lost in the rift was unbearable. The air thickened with heat, and Rourke realized the crown was testing him, not for strength, but for resolve. Somewhere deep in the hum was a question. Will you pay the price? Before Rourke could answer, the structure shuddered violently. Alerts screamed across the comms. Unidentified vessels had appeared just outside the crown. Dominion warships. Somehow, they had tracked the Resolute through the rift. The docking bay gates began to glow, melting into translucent barriers. Hale cursed, slamming commands into her wrist console to bring weapons online, but internal systems refused to obey. "It's locking us in," she snapped. The hum shifted again, faster now, as if the crown was impatient. Rourke clenched his fists. The Dominion was here for him, and for whatever the crown represented. Dominion boarding craft slammed against. The crown's exterior, their hulls screeching as if repelled by the structure's own defenses. Rourke knew they wouldn't be stopped for long. The crown pulsed brighter, casting the chamber in black and gold light. Vance staggered, clutching his head, screaming about the choice over and over. Hale raised her rifle toward the smaller crown, eyes cold. If this thing falls into their hands, we're done. Rourke stepped between her and the artifact. He didn't know if it could be destroyed, and deep down he wasn't sure he wanted it destroyed at all. Outside, the Dominion, fleet prepared to breach. Inside, the crown waited. In the split second before the first breach charge detonated, the crown surged forward, slamming into Rourke's chest with the force of a heartbeat. He gasped as liquid fire poured through his veins, visions flashing. Faster than thought, memories not his own, wars fought in galaxies without names, thrones empty for millennia. He heard 1,000 voices speak as one. The bearer returns. The shockwave threw the crew back as the chamber went silent, save for the low, steady hum now resonating from Rourke himself. The Dominion stormed inside, but their weapons faltered mid-fire, dropping harmlessly to the floor. Rourke turned to face them, and for the first time, they looked afraid. The Dominion commander froze mid-stride, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. "That crown! It cannot be here!" he rasped, stepping back. His troops hesitated, the arrogance drained from their postures. Rourke could feel their fear like heat on his skin. His vision was clearer now, each enemy soldier outlined by possibilities. Alive, dead, fleeing, kneeling. The crown's presence filled him with an awareness that was intoxicating and terrifying. Hale moved cautiously to his side, whispering, "Captain, are you still you?" He turned to her, his eyes now threaded with faint gold light. "I'm more than I was." It wasn't a boast. It was a statement of fact. The boarding troops broke formation, some backing toward the exit, others lowering weapons entirely. Rourke's voice carried without shouting, each word thrumming in the air like a struck chord. "Leave now! This place is mine!" It wasn't bravado. The command rooted itself in their minds, twisting their instincts into obedience. "The Dominion," Commander snarled, but his own feet betrayed him, stepping backward toward the door. Hale's jaw tightened as she realized it wasn't just fear. It was compulsion. The crown was rewriting their will. Outside the chamber, the sound of retreating. Boots echoed into silence. The victory should have felt satisfying, but unease crept into Rourke's thoughts. The crown was showing him corridors of power, maps to unclaimed strongholds, weaknesses in the Dominion's empire. Each revelation felt like a gift, but also a chain. "You could end the war in weeks," it whispered. "You could unite the galaxy under your banner." Yet, alongside the intoxicating vision, came the image of endless battles, his face carved into statues across countless worlds. He saw himself not as a savior, but as a ruler who had forgotten the taste of his own humanity. The hum was patient, but insistent. The Resolute systems flared back to life, more powerful than ever. Shields registered at triple capacity, weapons humming with energy levels that defied engineering. Rourke ordered the crew to prepare for launch. Hale hesitated. "You're taking it with us?" she asked, gesturing to the crown fused to his chest plate. "It's part of me now," he replied, voice like distant thunder. "We go home, but we don't go quietly." The rift coordinates burned bright in his mind, given freely by the crown. The way back was open, and for the first time since entering the rift, Rourke saw Earth again, not as a dream, but as a promise. As the Resolute rose from the throne chamber, the crown's vast arches opened of their own accord, sending cascades of light into the void. Outside, the Dominion fleet scattered, unwilling to challenge the ship that carried the relic of their nightmares. Rourke stood on the bridge, feeling the hum settle into a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat shared between man and machine. Hale glanced at him, her voice low. "When we get back, what will you do with that thing?" Rourke didn't answer. In truth, he didn't know. But somewhere deep inside, the crown did, and it was already making plans. The rift reappeared, like a wound in space, its swirling edges casting reflections across the Resolute's reinforced hull. Crew members stared at it with mixed dread and longing. This was the way home, but the last time they entered it, they'd been swallowed whole. Now, the crown pulsed against Rourke's chest, feeding him streams of navigational data that shifted faster than any human pilot could process. He didn't so much steer the ship as allow it to guide them. "Engage," he ordered, his voice carrying a weight that silenced every murmur. The Resolute surged forward, the rift's gravity seizing, them folding stars into ribbons. For a moment, Rourke's vision split, one half watching the crew, the other watching centuries of history that weren't his. They emerged into familiar space, but peace was a lie. Dominion ships were already there, arranged in an imposing blockade. Hale cursed under her breath, scanning the fleet composition. 2 dreadnoughts, 6 cruisers, dozens of fighters. Any normal human vessel would be shredded in minutes. But the Resolute was no longer normal. The crown's hum became a steady drumbeat, and weapon systems glowed with alien energy. "Target their flagship," Rourke said. The order was calm, almost too calm. The first volley ripped through Dominion shielding like paper, detonating the ship's spine in a blossom of molten light. The blockade faltered instantly, confusion sweeping through enemy ranks. The Dominion's counterattack was swift, but their weapons misfired, as though space itself was bending against them. The Resolute danced between incoming fire, its movements sharp and impossible. On the bridge, Rourke's hands moved over controls he didn't recognize, yet knew exactly how to use. The crown whispered firing solutions, weak points, and enemy. Intent before it happened. Every shot landed true, each enemy vessel either crippled or fleeing. Hale stared at the tactical display, the realization dawning that the captain wasn't just fighting better, he was fighting as if the battle was already over. Within minutes, the blockade broke entirely. Space was theirs. But the victory brought no relief. Rourke's mind burned with visions of the Dominion's core worlds, their defenses laid bare. "One push, and they'd never touch Earth again," the crown urged, its voice woven into his thoughts. The temptation was a weight on his chest heavier than the relic itself. Hale approached slowly, her gaze locked on him. "We can go home now," she said, as if reminding him of something he might forget. Rourke looked at her, then at the map, of war glowing on the main screen. Every route led to conquest. Every choice led to blood. He wondered if he could still choose peace. The crew celebrated cautiously, but whispers began to circulate. Some saw Rourke as a savior, others as a man who had brought back something dangerous. Vance kept his distance, his eyes following the crown whenever Rourke entered the room. It was Vance who finally broke the quiet. "It's not done with you, Captain," he said one night on the darkened bridge. "You think you're steering it, but it's steering you." Rourke didn't respond. He couldn't. Not when part of him suspected the lieutenant was right. And deep down, in the place where the crown's hum lived, he felt a truth he dared not speak. He didn't want it to stop. The veil began to shift behind them, folding in on itself. The crown's voice grew urgent, warning that once it closed, the path to the black sun would vanish forever. This was the last chance to secure the fleet for eternity. Rourke weighed the risk. If they left now, they could return to human space with an armada unlike anything the galaxy had seen. If they stayed, the veil might trap them for centuries, as it had before. Hale's hand rested lightly on his arm. "We came here to get home, remember?" Her tone carried both plea and warning, but the crown's hum surged, drowning her words with visions of worlds bending the knee. The decision came as the first enemy scout ships entered visual range. Rourke gave the order to move. The armada shifted formation with mechanical perfection, flowing like water toward the rift's coordinates. Enemy transmissions crackled with disbelief at the sight of the fleet. The Resolute led the way, its alien-powered, drives cutting through warped space as though slicing silk. But as they approached the rift, it flickered, unstable, collapsing in on itself. Hale's voice carried the tension of the bridge. "If we don't make it now, we won't make it at all." Rourke pushed the fleet harder. Crossing the rift with so many ships was chaos. Space twisted, folding the fleet into patterns that hurt the human eye. The crown's hum became a roar, guiding each vessel through microshifts in reality to keep them intact. The Resolute emerged first, pulling the fleet with it like a tide breaking free. The moment they cleared the distortion, Rourke's chest felt lighter, though the hum never stopped. Behind them, the rift sealed with a final flash, leaving the black sun and its secrets cut off once more. The fleet was theirs now, permanently, and the galaxy had no idea what had just stepped into its sky. The Dominion found out first. Their core worlds lit up with panic signals as the alien fleet appeared in orbit without warning. No shots were fired at first. Rourke wanted them to see the scale of what they faced. Entire cities went dark as power grids failed under the fleet's silent pressure. Dominion diplomats begged for terms, offering territory, tribute, and alliances. Rourke accepted their surrender without a battle. It was too easy. Hale watched him closely, as if the ease itself worried her more than any war could have. News of the Dominion's fall spread like wildfire. Worlds that had once feared them now turned their eyes toward the new power that had taken its place. Some reached out with offers of alliance. Others fortified their borders, preparing for what they believed was inevitable conquest. Rourke sat. In the Resolute's command chair, the crown's hum wrapping around his thoughts like a cloak. Each offer, each plea, was a piece in a larger puzzle only he and the crown could see. It spoke to him in strategies, ways to secure peace that looked like war, ways to win hearts by conquering them first. But cracks began to show within the crew. A faction led quietly by Vance feared what they were becoming. He argued in hushed tones that they'd traded the Dominion's tyranny for another. Hale listened more than she spoke, but Rourke noticed her long silences and measured glances. Trust was fraying, yet every time Rourke touched the crown, those concerns felt like distant murmurs. The hum drowned them out, replacing doubt with purpose. He told himself it was clarity. The crown told him it was leadership. He wanted to believe both. The first rebellion came from a Dominion splinter fleet, refusing the surrender order. Rourke's armada crushed them in minutes, but Hale saw how easily he'd chosen destruction over diplomacy. She confronted him in the war room, her voice low but sharp. "Every fight you win this way makes it harder to stop. Maybe you've already stopped trying. He met her gaze but didn't answer. The Crown was already feeding him scenarios for the next conquest, and it was hard to remember why he'd ever doubted them. The hum was almost tender now, as though it knew it had him. Earth's fleet commanders summoned him for a council unlike any in history. Their message was clear. Return the alien armada to neutral space, disband it, and destroy the Crown. The demand was laughable, but Rourke kept his expression calm. Earth is safe because of what I've done, he told them. Take this away, and you invite the Dominion or worse to fill the vacuum. They threatened sanctions, even war. He smiled without humor. Then you'll see which side of the line you stand on when the galaxy changes. The hum purred at his defiance. After the council, Hale found him alone on the Resolute. You can still walk away, she said. Give the Crown up before it swallows you completely. Rourke's eyes, faintly lit with golden threads, locked on hers. This isn't about me anymore. It's about survival. She didn't argue further. Somewhere deep in the ship, the hum grew stronger. It wasn't survival the Crown wanted. It was reign. The final decision came not in a council chamber or a war room, but in the quiet of deep space. Rourke stood on the bridge. The galaxy spread before him in pinpricks of light. The Crown whispered the future. 1,000 years of peace. Under his hand, bought with the blood of those who resisted. It promised him glory, safety, and the knowledge that Earth would never fall. But it also showed him the price. Empires crushed, cultures erased, his own humanity fading until only the Crown remained. Hale entered silently, standing beside him without speaking. They watched the stars together, the weight of unspoken choices between them. Finally, she asked, Do you even remember the man you were before the rift? He didn't answer. He wasn't sure the question mattered anymore. The hum was so deep now it was part of his heartbeat. He felt the armada waiting, every ship a thought away from movement. The galaxy was holding its breath. In that stillness, Rourke gave the order. The armada moved, not toward conquest, but toward the neutral border systems where smaller worlds had long lived in fear. They would come under his protection, whether they asked for it or not. Hale's expression was unreadable as she relayed the commands. She didn't stop him, but she didn't support him either. The Crown was pleased. It didn't care if the galaxy loved him or feared him, only that it obeyed. Months passed, and the galaxy reshaped itself around the fleet's shadow. Trade flourished in protected sectors. Pirate lords vanished overnight, but freedom shrank. Every decision flowed through the Resolute, through Rourke, through the Crown. Hale still served, but her eyes were those of someone watching a storm form on the horizon. Vance disappeared during a routine inspection, his quarters empty except for a single line scratched into the wall. The Crown serves itself. One day, far beyond charted space, the hum shifted. It was no longer the steady pulse he'd grown used to. It was a call. The black sun had awakened again, and with it, something new. Rourke stood in silence, staring into the void. The Crown whispered that the real war was about to begin. He didn't smile, but his grip on the armrest tightened. The Resolute turned toward the source of the signal, the armada following like shadows. Somewhere out there, the next chapter waited. And the galaxy, for better or worse, would remember his name. Earth's orbital defense platforms loomed ahead, their transponders singing the familiar codes of home. The Resolute approached at controlled speed, its alien-augmented systems carefully throttled to avoid detection as something unnatural. Rourke ordered the crew to maintain blackout on the Crown's existence, framing their return as a survival story. The welcome from Fleet Command was warm, almost tearful, until the debriefs began. Questions about the 2-year disappearance turned invasive. How had they survived? Why had the Dominion fled? Rourke gave partial truths, omitting the crown entirely. The fewer who knew, the better. At least that's what he told himself. But the crown had other ideas. During the welcome ceremony aboard Fleet Command Station Aegis, Rourke's vision doubled again. He saw not the decorated halls and applauding officers, but the station's hidden structural weaknesses, command override codes, and the faces of those who might one day oppose him. The hum wrapped these images in a warm embrace, like an advisor whispering strategy. It was intoxicating. As an admiral shook his hand, Rourke smiled politely, but in the back of his mind, he was cataloging which of these men and women would kneel and which would resist. It frightened him that the thought didn't frighten him enough. Hale noticed the shift. She found him later in the observation lounge, staring at Earth through the viewport. "You're not the same man who left," she said. Rourke's reply was quiet but sharp. "No one survives the rift unchanged." She stepped closer. "This isn't about survival anymore. You've brought back a weapon no one else can control. You think they'll just let you keep it?" Rourke didn't answer immediately. He could already see the orders forming in Fleet Command's minds. Contain him, dissect the crown, weaponize it under their flag. The idea of surrendering it was unthinkable. The hum agreed. Fleet Command made their move sooner than expected. Security squads arrived under the pretense of escort detail, but their formation was too tight, their weapons too ready. Hale's hand drifted to her sidearm, but Rourke raised a hand to stop her. The crown pulsed once, and every weapon in the squad powered down in unison. Shock registered on their faces as Rourke walked past without a word. Outside, sirens began to wail. He was no longer their returning hero. He was their greatest unknown, and unknowns are dangerous to those who value control. He realized then that his war was no longer against the Dominion alone. That night, Rourke stood in the Resolute's dimly lit bridge. The crew gathered silently. He told them the truth. Not all of it, but enough. Command will not stop. They'll try to take what we have. And if they succeed, the galaxy will burn under their banner instead of ours. Some of the crew nodded in grim understanding. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Hale met his gaze, unflinching. "So what now?" The crown's hum filled the silence before Rourke answered. "Now, we decide who we serve, ourselves or the ones who think they own us." The choice was made before the words left his mouth. Resolute left Earth's orbit under false orders, a fabricated mission to patrol the outer colonies. Fleet Command's pursuit was inevitable, but Rourke intended to vanish before they could mobilize. The Crown guided them toward a sector outside charted space, a dead zone known as the Veil. Even without the artifact, no sane captain would sail there. Radiation storms, gravitational anomalies, and whispers of ships that never returned. Rourke felt the pull instantly, the hum deepening into something more complex, like a second heartbeat layered under his own. The crew followed, some out of loyalty, others because there was no turning back. The Veil was worse than its legends. Space warped visibly, distant stars twisting into serpentine trails of light. Shields screamed under invisible pressure. The Resolute's hull groaned like a living thing. Yet the Crown kept them steady, guiding their path through hidden corridors of calm within the chaos. Hale monitored the readings, her brow furrowed. "This isn't navigation, it's manipulation. Space is folding for us." Rourke said nothing, but he could feel it too. The Veil wasn't resisting them. It was welcoming them. Whatever was inside wanted them here. They broke through the final wave of distortion into an impossible sight. An entire fleet, silent and still, suspended in perfect formation around a black sun. The ships were alien, but shared elements with the Crown's design, sleek, seamless, and vast beyond comprehension. Some bore scars of battle older than recorded history. Others were pristine, as though waiting for a signal. "Graveyard?" Vance asked. Rourke shook his head. "Armory." The hum became a steady chant now, each note like a command spoken in a forgotten tongue. The fleet was not dead, it was asleep. The moment they crossed into the fleet's perimeter, systems across, the Resolute synchronized with the alien vessels. Energy surged, flowing from the black sun itself into every hull. Rourke's mind split again, half on the bridge, half in the dark between stars where this fleet had been born. He saw their creators, beings of impossible scale, crowned in shadow. The images burned into him with the certainty of memory. This was the source of the Dominion's fear. This was why the crown had been hidden in the rift. It was the key to unlocking a force that could reshape the galaxy. But the crown's voice was no longer patient. "Choose," it whispered. The fleet could awaken under his command, sweep across the stars, and erase every threat to Earth forever. Or it could be left to sleep, its power lost again to time and myth. Rourke felt the decision pulling at him like gravity. Hale's voice cut through the haze. "If you take this, there's no coming back." Her words rang true. The crown was not offering power. It was demanding allegiance, and once given, it would never let go. Rourke's hand tightened on the armrest. The hum swelled, and the black sun began to pulse. The first ship awoke with a sound like a planet's heartbeat. Energy cascaded down its hull, weapons and engines, roaring to life after eons of silence. The rest followed in sequence, a chain reaction that lit the darkness like a second dawn. On the Resolute's bridge, every console blazed with data streams too fast for human eyes. The crown translated effortlessly, feeding Rourke tactical control over an armada that dwarfed anything the Dominion or Earth had ever conceived. Hale stood frozen, watching history pivot in real time. "You've just declared war on the galaxy," she whispered. The Dominion's reaction was immediate. Long-range sensors lit up with inbound fleets, drawn by whatever energy surge the awakening had caused. Rourke saw them coming, but now the fear was gone. He was no longer defending, no longer reacting. The crown's hum became a battle hymn, and the fleet moved with a precision that felt like instinct. Ships formed wings around the Resolute, their formation flawless, their power overwhelming. The Dominion's reinforcements were not approaching. A prey. They were flying into a predator's jaws. The battle was brief and brutal. Dominion ships disintegrated under barrages of weaponry that bent physics in ways human science couldn't explain. Beams of light sliced through shielding as though it were mist. Entire wings of enemy fighters vanished in pulses of gravity that tore them into motes of dust. The armada moved like a single organism, obeying Rourke's will without hesitation. Hale watched, horror and awe warring in her eyes. "This isn't war," she said. "It's execution." Rourke didn't disagree. There was no glory here, only inevitability. When the last Dominion ship shattered, the battlefield fell silent. Wreckage drifted between the alien vessels, glowing faintly from residual energy. The crown's hum quieted, shifting into something almost like satisfaction. Rourke knew the message it carried. This is the beginning. The armada now looked to him, a living extension of the crown's will. For the first time, he wondered if there was truly any difference between the two. Hale stepped closer, her voice low. "So what's next, Captain? Liberation or conquest?" Rourke didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted to the black sun, its surface shifting like a great eye watching him. He could feel the pathways stretching from here to every corner of the galaxy. The crown offered them all, wrapped in the promise of safety, unity, and unchallenged power. But beneath that promise was the truth, Once he took the next step, there would be no turning back. The hum deepened, patient but unrelenting. The galaxy waited for his decision. The Armada's sensors detected movement far beyond the Dominion's territory. Fleets from neutral worlds converging, drawn by fear and curiosity. The Crown whispered that this was the perfect moment to strike, to seize control before others could unite against him. But Rourke hesitated, feeling the weight of every possible future pressing against his thoughts. Hale stood at his side, silent but watchful, as though waiting for him to declare which man he had chosen to be. The crew followed orders without question, their loyalty now bound as much to the Crown's influence as to their captain. In the stillness between battles, Rourke realized that the hum no longer sounded alien. It felt like his own pulse,